The lightning split the Wyoming sky like a jagged scar as Nathan Vance spotted the overturned stagecoach through sheets of rain so thick he could barely see his horse's ears. He had been riding hard toward Fort Laramie when the storm hit with a fury that matched nothing he had seen in his 30 years on this earth. And now here was proof that he was not the only soul foolish enough to be caught in nature's wrath on this June evening in 1878. Nathan urged his bay gelding forward, water streaming from the brim of his hat, as thunder rolled across the prairie like artillery fire. As he drew closer, he could see the coach had lost a wheel and tipped onto its side. The horses gone, either run off or cut loose by someone with enough sense to save the animals if not themselves. Then he heard it, a woman's voice calling out, not screaming in panic, but calling with the kind of steady determination that spoke of someone refusing to surrender to circumstance. "Hello? Is someone there? I need help." Nathan dismounted and secured his horse to the wreckage, then moved around to where he could see into the coach's interior through the door now facing skyward. A young woman with dark auburn hair plastered to her face looked up at him, her gray eyes wide but clear, her dress soaked through and torn at the shoulder. She was standing on what had been the side wall of the coach, reaching up toward the opening. "Can you reach my hand?" Nathan called down, extending his arm through the doorway. "I think so," she said, stretching upward. Her fingers brushed his and then caught hold, and he felt the surprising strength in her grip as he braced himself and pulled. She was lighter than he expected, or perhaps desperation lent him extra power, but within moments she was climbing through the opening and he was helping her down the side of the overturned coach to stand on solid ground, though the mud threatened to steal her footing. Anyone else inside? Nathan had to shout over the wind. "The driver was thrown when we crashed. He hit his head on a rock and—" She paused, rain washing down her face. "He did not survive. I tried to help him, but there was nothing I could do." Nathan nodded grimly. "We need to get you somewhere dry. Can you ride?" "I can do whatever is necessary to survive this night," she said, and he believed her. He brought her to his horse, which stood with the patience of a well-trained animal, and helped her mount before swinging up behind her. She was shivering now, the adrenaline likely wearing off as the reality of her situation set in. Nathan shrugged out of his oilskin duster and draped it around her shoulders as best he could while sitting horseback, then wrapped one arm around her waist to steady her as he took up the reins with his other hand. "There is a lined shack about 2 miles northeast," he said close to her ear so she could hear him over the storm. "We will shelter there until this blows over." She nodded against his chest, and he felt her lean back into him, whether for warmth or simply because she had no strength left to hold herself upright he could not say. Nathan turned his horse into the wind and rain and pushed forward through the darkness, relying on his knowledge of this land and the occasional flash of lightning to guide their path. The ride felt endless, each minute stretching like hours as the storm battered them without mercy. But finally, the dark shape of the lined shack materialized through the downpour. It was a rough structure, built to shelter cowboys during roundup season, nothing more than 4 walls and a roof. But right now it looked like a palace to Nathan, and he suspected the woman in his arms felt the same way. He dismounted first, then helped her down, and together they stumbled to the door. The latch was simple and gave way easily, and then they were inside, out of the rain at last, standing in darkness broken only by the lightning flashing through gaps in the walls. Nathan kept a supply cache here as he did at several such shelters across the range. He moved by memory and touched to where he knew a shelf held matches and candles, and within moments he had light blooming in the small space. The woman stood near the door, dripping onto the rough plank floor, her arms wrapped around herself, still shaking with cold. "We need to get you into dry clothes," Nathan said, moving to a wooden trunk in the corner. "I keep spare things here for emergencies. They will be too large, but better than what you are wearing." He pulled out a flannel shirt and a pair of trousers, along with a blanket that had been stored in oilcloth to keep it dry. When he turned, she was watching him with an expression he could not quite read, something between gratitude and appraisal. "Thank you," she said. "I am Olivia Turner. I was traveling from Cheyenne to Fort Laramie to meet my cousin who promised me work in his general store." "Nathan Vance," he replied, handing her the dry clothes. "I run cattle on the range south of Fort Laramie. I will step outside while you change. In this storm." Olivia looked toward the door where rain was still hammering against the wood. "I will stand under the eave. You need privacy." Something in her expression softened. "You are a gentleman, Mr. Vance. Just a man who was raised right, Miss Turner." He stepped outside and stood with his back to the door, rain dripping from the narrow roof overhang but no longer soaking him completely. He tended to his horse, leading the animal to the lean-to attached to the side of the shack where it would have some shelter, removing the saddle and rubbing the bay down with handfuls of dry straw he found stored there. All the while his mind turned over the situation. A young woman alone, heading to Fort Laramie, the driver dead, no doubt possessions lost or destroyed in the wreck. She would need help beyond just this night's shelter. "You can come back in now," Olivia called, her voice carrying through the door. Nathan returned to find her sitting on the single rough bunk built against the far wall, wrapped in the blanket with his oversized clothes hanging on her frame. She had taken down her hair and was trying to wring water from it with her hands. Even bedraggled and wearing clothes meant for a man much larger than she, there was something striking about her, a quality he could not quite name. Strength, perhaps, or determination, or maybe just the way the candlelight caught in her eyes. "Better?" he asked. "Much. Though I fear I will never be truly warm again." Nathan moved to the small potbelly stove in the corner and began building a fire with kindling and wood from the supply box. "Give it time. Once this gets going, this place will heat up quick enough." As he worked, Olivia spoke. "I do not suppose there is any food in your supply cache. Beans, coffee, some jerky. Not fancy, but it will fill your belly." "Right now, beans sound like a feast." He got the fire going and put coffee on to boil, then opened a tin of beans and set it on the stove to warm. The small shack was already growing warmer, the storm's chill retreating before the fire's heat. Nathan found a tin cup and a plate, the basic implements needed for survival, nothing more. They ate in relative silence at first, both focused on the simple pleasure of hot food and drink after the ordeal of the storm. Nathan found himself stealing glances at Olivia, watching the way she ate with careful precision despite her obvious hunger. The way she held her coffee cup with both hands as if drawing warmth from it into her very soul. "Tell me about this cousin of yours," Nathan said finally, more to break the silence than from any real curiosity. Olivia set down her cup. "Thomas Turner. He owns a general store in Fort Laramie. I have never met him, actually. He is my late father's cousin, which I suppose makes him my cousin once removed or some such thing. When my parents died last winter of influenza, I wrote to every relative I could think of, and he was the only one who replied. He said he could use help in the store and offered me a position and room and board. Generous of him, or practical. Good help is hard to find on the frontier, or so I have heard." She paused, looking into her coffee. "I am not naive, Mr. Vance. I know I am coming west out of desperation, not adventure. My parents left debts more than assets. I had three choices. Marry a man I did not love who made it clear he was interested in acquiring my father's property more than acquiring me, become a burden to friends who had little enough of their own, or accept my cousin's offer and start fresh. I chose to start fresh. Nathan respected her honesty. Too many people dressed up their circumstances in false pride or elaborate stories. Fort Laramie is a good town, growing but not so wild as some places. Your cousin's store is well established from what I know of it. You know Thomas Turner. Not personally, but I have bought supplies there. It is a solid business. Olivia nodded, seeming relieved. I am glad to hear it. I confess, as I sat in that overturned coach with the storm raging around me and the driver dead on the ground outside, I wondered if I had made a terrible mistake. But then you appeared, like something out of a dime novel, and here I am, warm and fed and alive. So perhaps it was meant to be after all. The storm saved you in a way, Nathan said. If it had not been so fierce, I would have been an hour ahead on the trail and never would have come across your coach. Then I am grateful for the storm, terrible as it was. They talked through the evening as the rain continued to drum on the roof and the fire crackled in the stove. Nathan learned that Olivia was 23 years old, educated at a boarding school back east before her family's fortunes declined. Well-read and intelligent, with opinions on everything from politics to literature. She had a quick wit that surprised him and made him laugh more than once, something he did not do often enough these days. In turn, he told her about his life, though there was less to tell. He had been born in Texas, came north with a cattle drive when he was 17, and stayed in Wyoming when he found he loved the land. He had built his herd slowly, working as a ranch hand for others while saving every penny, buying cattle when he could, claiming rangeland that no one else wanted and making it productive through sheer stubbornness and hard work. He was not rich, but he was independent, and that meant everything to him. "No wife waiting for you back at your ranch?" Olivia asked, and there was something in her tone that made him look at her more closely. "No wife, no ranch house either, just a dugout built into a hillside. It keeps the wind out mostly, and that is enough for now. Sounds lonely." "Sometimes," Nathan admitted, "but it is the life I chose. I think we all tell ourselves that what we have is what we chose, even when circumstances choose for us." He could not argue with that. The storm finally began to break near midnight, the rain easing to a steady patter instead of a deluge, the thunder growing more distant. Nathan knew they would need to stay here until morning regardless. The prairie would be a maze of mud and water, treacherous in the darkness even for someone who knew the land as well as he did. "You should sleep," he told Olivia, gesturing to the bunk. "I will sit up and keep the fire going." "That is hardly fair. You are as exhausted as I am." "I have slept in worse places than a chair by a warm fire. Take the bunk, Miss Turner, I insist." She looked like she might argue further, but exhaustion won out. "Thank you, Mr. Vance, for everything. You saved my life tonight. Just happened to be in the right place at the right time." "I think you are more than that, but I am too tired to argue the point." She settled onto the bunk, pulling the blanket around herself, and within minutes her breathing had evened out into sleep. Nathan sat in the rough chair by the stove, feeding wood into the fire occasionally, listening to the rain and the sound of Olivia's breathing and thinking about how strange life could be. This morning, he had been riding to town to buy supplies and arrange the sale of some steers. Now he was sheltering a beautiful woman he had never met before, a woman who seemed unlike anyone he had ever known. And tomorrow he would deliver her safely to Fort Laramie and likely never see her again. The thought bothered him more than it should have. Morning came with pale sunlight breaking through the clouds and the smell of wet earth thick in the air. Nathan woke from a doze to find Olivia already awake, standing by the small window, looking out at the transformed landscape. "Good morning," she said without turning around. "The world looks newborn today." Nathan stood and stretched, his back protesting from the night spent in the chair. "How are you feeling?" "Better than I have any right to feel, considering everything." She turned to face him. "How far to Fort Laramie from here?" 5 miles, maybe 6. "The going will be slow with the mud, but we should make it by midday." They shared the last of the coffee and some jerky for breakfast. Then Nathan saddled his horse and helped Olivia mount. This time in the daylight, he was more aware of her body against his as he settled behind her, the way she fit naturally in the circle of his arm. She seemed to feel it too, a tension that had nothing to do with discomfort. The ride to Fort Laramie was indeed slow, the horse picking its way carefully through mud and around new-formed puddles that dotted the prairie like scattered mirrors, reflecting the clearing sky. They talked little on the journey, but the silence felt comfortable, companionable, as if they had known each other longer than a single storm-tossed night. Fort Laramie came into view finally. The town clustered around the old military post, buildings of wood and stone spreading out from the original fort in an organic pattern that spoke of growth driven by need rather than planning. Nathan guided his horse down the main street, drawing curious looks from townspeople who were out assessing storm damage and beginning the work of cleaning up. "Which building is your cousin's store?" Nathan asked. Olivia pointed to a substantial 2-story structure near the center of town, with Turner General Store painted in neat letters across a sign above the door. Nathan rode up and dismounted, then helped Olivia down. She swayed slightly when her feet hit the ground, whether from stiffness or nerves he could not say. "Will you come in with me?" she asked. "I would like to introduce you to my cousin so he knows to whom I owe my life." "If you wish." They entered the store together, a bell jingling above the door. The interior was well stocked and organized, shelves lined with everything from flour and sugar to tools and dry goods. A man emerged from the back, middle-aged and portly, with mutton-chop whiskers and sharp eyes that took in the scene quickly. "May I help you?" he asked, his gaze moving from Nathan to Olivia and back. "Mr. Turner, Thomas Turner." Olivia stepped forward. "I am Olivia Turner, your cousin. I was supposed to arrive yesterday, but there was an accident." Thomas Turner's expression shifted from polite inquiry to surprise to something else, something harder to read. "Olivia. Good Lord, child, we thought you must have been caught in the storm. I was about to organize a search party." "What happened?" Olivia explained about the crash, the dead driver, and Nathan's rescue. As she spoke, Nathan watched Thomas Turner's face and saw calculation there, a merchant's mind working through problems and solutions. When Olivia finished, Thomas extended his hand to Nathan. "Mr. Vance, you have my sincere gratitude for saving my cousin's life. If there is anything I can do to repay you, you have only to name it." "No payment necessary," Nathan said. "Anyone would have done the same. Not everyone, I fear." Thomas turned back to Olivia. "You poor dear, you must be exhausted. Come, I will show you to your room upstairs. Mrs. Kowalski, my housekeeper, will help you get settled and find you proper clothes." Olivia looked at Nathan, and he saw something in her eyes he had not seen before, a vulnerability, a reluctance to say goodbye. "Mr. Vance, I do not know how to thank you properly." "No thanks needed, Miss Turner. I am just glad you are safe. Will you be staying in town long?" Nathan hesitated. He had planned to complete his business and return to his herd by tomorrow at the latest. A day or two, perhaps. "Then I hope I will see you again before you leave." "Perhaps," he said, though even as he said it he was already thinking of reasons to stay longer, excuses to return to town, anything that would let him see her again. Thomas Turner ushered Olivia toward a door that led to stairs ascending to the second floor, but she turned back once more, her eyes locking with Nathan's across the store. Then she was gone, and Nathan was left standing alone among the barrels and shelves, feeling like something important had just walked out of his life. He spent the rest of the day taking care of his business in town, selling his cattle at a fair price, buying the supplies he needed, getting his horse reshod at the blacksmith's. All routine tasks, but his mind kept drifting back to Olivia, to the way she had looked at him that morning in the sunlight, to the sound of her voice and the strength in her when she had climbed out of that wrecked coach. He told himself he was being foolish. She was a town woman, educated, refined despite her circumstances. He was a rancher living in a dugout, barely scraping by. What could he possibly offer her? And yet, he could not shake the feeling that something significant had happened in that lined shack, something that went beyond simple rescue and gratitude. That evening, Nathan took a room at the boarding house, telling himself it was because his business had taken longer than expected, and it made no sense to ride back to his land in the dark. He ate supper in the boarding house dining room, a simple meal of beef stew and biscuits, served by a widow woman who seemed to know everyone's business and was happy to share it. "I heard you pulled Thomas Turner's cousin out of a wrecked stage during the storm," she said as she poured him more coffee. "That was a brave thing you did." "Just doing what anyone would do," Nathan replied. "Still, that girl is lucky you came along. Lucky to have family waiting for her here too. Thomas has been alone since his wife died 2 years back. I think he is glad for the company and the help in the store." Nathan wondered about that, about what Olivia's life would be like here, working in her cousin's store, living under his roof. Would she be happy? Would she come to love this rough frontier town, or would she always long for the more civilized life she had left behind? He was still thinking about it when he finally went to bed, and she haunted his dreams that night, her gray eyes and auburn hair, her quiet strength and quick wit. He woke the next morning knowing he could not leave town without seeing her again, even if he had no good excuse to do so. Luck, or perhaps fate, provided the excuse. As Nathan was settling his bill at the boarding house, a young boy ran up to him, breathless and excited. "Are you Nathan Vance?" "I am. Miss Turner sent me to find you. She says, can you please come to the store when you have time? She has something she needs to discuss with you." Nathan's heart kicked up its pace. "Tell her I will be there directly." He found Olivia in the store, standing behind the counter, wearing a proper dress now, her hair pinned up in a neat style. She looked every bit the respectable shopkeeper's assistant, except for the brightness in her eyes when she saw him enter. "Mr. Vance, thank you for coming. I have a problem and I hope you might help me solve it." "What sort of problem?" She glanced toward the back room, then lowered her voice. "I had a trunk with all my possessions in the stagecoach. Clothes, keepsakes, everything I own. My cousin has advanced me money to buy necessities, but I need to retrieve that trunk if it survived the crash. I was hoping you might take me back to the site of the accident so I can look for it." Nathan should have thought of that himself. "Of course. When do you want to go?" "This afternoon, if possible. My cousin has agreed to let me take the time and he is lending me a horse. I will be ready whenever you are." They set out after the midday meal, riding side by side this time, Olivia sitting astride the borrowed horse with the ease of someone who had ridden before, despite her refined upbringing. The sun was warm and the prairie was showing the resilience of the land, already recovering from the storm's fury, wildflowers opening their faces to the light. "I am grateful for this," Olivia said as they rode. "Not just for your help today, but for everything. I have been thinking about what happened, how you found me. It seems like more than chance. You believe in fate, Miss Turner. I am not sure what I believe anymore. I used to think I had my life planned out, that I knew how things would unfold. Then my parents died, and everything I thought was certain became uncertain. Now I am here, in a place I never imagined, doing work I never trained for, and the strange thing is—" She paused, looking out across the rolling grassland. "The strange thing is, I do not feel lost. I feel like maybe, for the first time in my life, I am exactly where I am supposed to be." Nathan did not know what to say to that, so he rode in silence, letting her words settle over him like dust after a summer rain. They found the wrecked stagecoach still lying on its side where it had fallen. Someone had removed the driver's body, probably the search party Thomas Turner mentioned. The interior of the coach had been partially stripped by looters, or perhaps by people from town salvaging what they could. But Olivia's trunk was still there, wedged under a seat, waterlogged and dented but intact. Nathan wrestled it free while Olivia watched from horseback. The trunk was heavy, swollen with water, but the lock still held. They secured it to Nathan's saddle with rope, and he tested the weight to make sure his horse could carry it along with him. "Got it," he said. "We should head back before it gets late." But Olivia was not looking at him. She was staring at something on the ground near the overturned coach, and when Nathan followed her gaze, he saw it too. A patch of turned earth, fresh and dark, with a simple wooden cross at its head. "Someone buried him," Olivia said softly. "The driver. I do not even know his name, but someone took the time to bury him properly." "That is the way of things out here," Nathan said. "People look after their own, and sometimes they look after strangers too, just because it is the right thing to do." Olivia dismounted and walked to the grave. She stood there for a long moment, her head bowed, and Nathan realized she was praying. When she returned to her horse, there were tears on her cheeks. "He died trying to get me here safely," she said. "I should have asked his name. I can find out if you want. Someone in town will know." "Yes. Please, I would like to know." They rode back to Fort Laramie in the golden afternoon light, the trunk bouncing gently against Nathan's saddle, the horse's content in the warmth. Olivia was quiet for a while, but finally she spoke. "Mr. Vance, may I ask you something personal?" "You can ask." "Cannot promise I will answer." "Fair enough." She took a breath. "When you look at me, what do you see?" Nathan was caught off guard by the question. "I am not sure I understand what you are asking." "I mean, do you see a charity case, a woman who needs rescuing, someone to be pitied?" "No," Nathan said immediately. "I see someone strong, someone who climbed out of that coach on her own power, who did not fall apart when things went wrong, who is making the best of a difficult situation. I see someone with courage." Olivia was quiet for a moment. "Thank you. That means more than you might think. My cousin has been kind, but there is something in the way he looks at me, like I am a problem he has solved or an obligation he has fulfilled. I do not want to be anyone's obligation." "Then do not be. It is not always that simple. Maybe it should be." She smiled at that, a real smile that lit up her face. "You see the world in very clear terms, do not you, Mr. Vance? The world is not as complicated as people make it. You do the right thing when you can, you work hard, you treat people fairly. Everything else is just noise. I wish I could see things that simply. Nothing stopping you." They arrived back at Fort Laramie as the sun was starting its descent toward the horizon. Nathan helped Olivia carry the trunk into the store and up the stairs to her room, which turned out to be a small but comfortable space under the eaves, with a window looking out over the main street. "Thank you again," Olivia said as Nathan set the trunk down. "You keep saving me, it seems." "Anyone would have helped you get your trunk." But not everyone would have come back to check on me. Not everyone would have asked about the driver's name because I wanted to know. She stepped closer, and Nathan found himself very aware of the small space, of how near she was, of how her eyes held his with an intensity that made his breath catch. "I think you are a good man, Nathan Vance, better than you give yourself credit for." "I am just a rancher, Miss Turner." "Nothing special." "I think you are wrong about that." For a moment, Nathan thought she might say something more, or that he might, words hovering in the air between them unspoken. But then footsteps sounded on the stairs and Thomas Turner's voice called up. "Olivia, are you up there?" "Yes, cousin. Mr. Vance was just helping me with my trunk." Thomas appeared at the top of the stairs, slightly winded from the climb. "Ah, Mr. Vance, good of you to help. I am sure you have other business to attend to." It was a dismissal, polite but firm. Nathan took the hint. "I should be getting on. Miss Turner, I hope you find everything in your trunk undamaged." "I am sure it will be fine. Thank you again." Nathan nodded to them both and left. But as he descended the stairs, he could not shake the feeling that Thomas Turner had interrupted deliberately. That perhaps Olivia's cousin was not as pleased with Nathan's continued presence as he claimed to be. Over the next week, Nathan found reasons to stay in Fort Laramie. He told himself it was because he was waiting for a response from a buyer in Cheyenne about another herd of cattle, or because his horse had thrown a shoe that needed replacing, or because there were supplies he needed that the store had to order special. All of these things were true, but they were also excuses, and he knew it. The real reason he stayed was Olivia. He saw her every day, sometimes just in passing on the street, sometimes in the store when he came in to buy something small and unnecessary. They talked when they could, brief conversations under Thomas Turner's watchful eye, but even those moments felt precious. Nathan learned that Olivia was quick with figures and had reorganized the store's inventory system to make it more efficient. He learned that she woke early every morning to watch the sunrise from her window, that she loved coffee but hated tea, that she had read every book in her trunk twice over and was hungry for new ones. Olivia learned that Nathan had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard and made her laugh, that he was honest to a fault, that he read the newspaper cover to cover every week, even though most of the news was weeks old by the time it reached Fort Laramie. They discovered they both loved thunderstorms despite what had happened. Both preferred spring to summer. Both felt most at peace when they were looking out at open spaces. The attraction between them grew obvious to anyone with eyes to see. Nathan found himself thinking about Olivia constantly, distracted from his work, staying up late because she filled his thoughts and made sleep impossible. He had never felt this way about anyone, this consuming awareness of another person, this need to be near her even when logic said he should ride back to his herd and his life and forget about the stranded traveler he had rescued in a storm. For her part, Olivia seemed equally affected. He caught her watching him when she thought he was not looking, saw the way her face brightened when he entered the store, noticed how she found reasons to stand near him when they talked, close enough that he could smell the lavender soap she used and see the flecks of green in her gray eyes. But there were obstacles. Thomas Turner's attitude toward Nathan had grown noticeably cooler. He was never outright rude, but he made it clear in small ways that Nathan's constant presence was not welcome. He interrupted conversations, assigned Olivia tasks that took her away from the store floor when Nathan was there, mentioned other men in town who had asked after his cousin with pointed emphasis. Nathan understood the source of Thomas's hostility, even if he did not like it. He was a rancher with little to his name beyond cattle and a dugout, while Thomas no doubt envisioned his cousin married to someone more substantial. a merchant or a professional man, someone who could provide the kind of life Thomas thought she deserved. The confrontation came on a Saturday afternoon. Nathan had come to the store to return a book he had borrowed from Olivia, one she had insisted he take when he mentioned an interest in the subject. He found Thomas alone behind the counter, no sign of Olivia anywhere. "Mr. Turner," Nathan said, setting the book on the counter. "Could you return this to Miss Turner for me? I wanted to thank her for the loan of it." Thomas looked at the book but did not touch it. "Mr. Vance, I think it is time we had a frank conversation." "All right. I am grateful to you for saving my cousin's life. That gratitude is sincere and will not change. However, I must ask you to consider Olivia's situation carefully. She is a young woman alone in the world, vulnerable, dependent on my charity. She may think she knows her own mind, but she has been through a terrible ordeal and is not thinking clearly." Nathan felt his jaw tighten. "With respect, Mr. Turner, Miss Turner seems perfectly clear-minded to me. She is developing feelings for you. I am sure you are aware of this. I am asking you, as a gentleman, to consider what you can offer her. You are a rancher living in a hole in the ground, struggling to build a herd. Olivia deserves better than a life of poverty and hardship on the frontier. Seems like that should be her decision, not yours or mine." Thomas's face reddened. "I am her family. I have a responsibility to look after her interests. If you care about her at all, you will leave her be and let her make a proper life here." "And what is a proper life?" "Marrying some man you choose. Spending her days working in your store and being grateful for it. Better than starving on a failed ranch with a man who cannot provide for her." The words stung because they held truth. Nathan could not offer Olivia much in material terms, not yet, maybe not ever. But he could offer her something Thomas's vision of a proper life could not, something he saw in her eyes every time they talked. "I will not press my attentions where they are not wanted," Nathan said carefully. "But I will not be chased off like a stray dog either. If Miss Turner wants me to leave her alone, she can tell me so herself. You are being selfish. Maybe, or maybe you are." Thomas opened his mouth to respond, but the bell above the door jingled and Olivia walked in, carrying a basket of eggs she had apparently been sent to purchase from a nearby farm. She looked between the two men, reading the tension instantly. "What is happening here?" she asked. "Nothing," Thomas said quickly. "Mr. Vance was just returning your book." But Olivia was not fooled. She set down the basket and crossed her arms, looking at her cousin. "Thomas, what did you say to him?" "I merely suggested that Mr. Vance should consider what is best for you." "And did it occur to you to let me decide what is best for me?" "Olivia, be reasonable. You have only been here 2 weeks. You cannot possibly know your own feelings yet. 2 weeks or 2 years, I know my feelings perfectly well." She turned to Nathan. "Whatever my cousin said, please ignore it. He means well, but he forgets that I am a grown woman, not a child in need of protection." Nathan saw the hurt flash across Thomas Turner's face and almost felt sorry for him. The man was trying to do right by his cousin in his own misguided way. But Olivia was right. She deserved to make her own choices. "I should go," Nathan said. "I have taken up enough of everyone's time." He left the store, but he did not go far. He stood outside around the corner where he could not be seen from the windows, unsure what to do next. He heard raised voices inside, Olivia and Thomas arguing, though he could not make out the words. Then the door opened and Olivia emerged, looking around until she spotted him. "Walk with me," she said, not a request but a command. They walked to the edge of town, where the buildings gave way to prairie, neither speaking until they were far enough away that no one could overhear. "I am sorry about Thomas," Olivia said finally. "He thinks he knows what is best for me, but he does not. He cannot. He is trying to protect you. From what? From happiness. She stopped walking and turned to face him. Nathan, I need to tell you something. I need you to hear it clearly so there is no misunderstanding. His heart was pounding. All right. When I was sitting in that overturned coach, cold and afraid and thinking I might die there, I made myself a promise. I promised that if I survived, I would never again let fear or propriety or other people's expectations keep me from living the life I wanted. That I would be brave, even when being brave was hard. That is a good promise. I am trying to keep it now. She took a breath, her eyes locked on his. I have feelings for you, Nathan. Strong feelings. I have tried to tell myself it is just gratitude, or that I am confused because you saved my life. But that is not what this is. I like who you are. I like your honesty and your kindness and the way you see the world. I like the way I feel when I am with you. I like how you make me laugh and how you listen when I talk and how you treat me like an equal instead of something fragile that might break. Nathan found his voice, though it came out rougher than he intended. I have feelings for you too, Olivia. I have from the start, I think. But your cousin is right about one thing. I do not have much to offer you. I am not a rich man and I may never be. I do not care about that. You say that now, but a hard life is different when you are living it day after day. Do you think I am afraid of hard work? Do you think I need luxury and comfort to be happy? No, but then stop making excuses. She stepped closer, reaching for his hand. I know we have only known each other a short time. I am not asking you to marry me tomorrow. But I am asking you not to walk away from us, because you think I deserve better. Let me decide what I deserve. Let me choose. Nathan looked down at their joined hands, at the way her fingers laced through his so naturally, like they were made to fit together. He thought about all the reasons he should step back, should let her go, should return to his solitary life and let her build a new one here in Fort Laramie. But when he looked into her eyes, all those reasons crumbled like sand. I do not want to walk away, he admitted. I tried to convince myself I should, but I cannot. You are all I think about, Olivia. You have been since that first night. Then do not walk away. Stay. Fight for this. Fight for us. Your cousin will make things difficult. Let him try. I am not dependent on his charity if I do not want to be. I can find other work, other lodging. No need for that, not yet anyway. Let me talk to him man to man. Maybe I can make him understand. And if you cannot, then we will figure something else out, together. Olivia's smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. Together. I like the sound of that. She stood on her toes and kissed him, quick and soft but deliberate, a claiming and a promise. When she pulled back, Nathan was grinning like a fool and did not care who saw it. Over the following weeks, Nathan courted Olivia properly despite Thomas Turner's disapproval. He took her on picnics on Sunday afternoons, her one day free from work in the store. He brought her wildflowers he picked from the prairie, simple bouquets that she arranged in a jar on her windowsill. He taught her to ride better, taking her out on longer excursions across the rangeland, showing her the land he loved and watching it come alive for her as well. Olivia bloomed under the attention and the freedom. The worried, wary look she had carried when she first arrived faded, replaced by a confidence and joy that made her even more beautiful. She laughed more, smiled constantly, talked about the future with an optimism that was infectious. They talked about everything during those stolen hours together. Nathan told her about his dreams for his ranch, how he wanted to build not just a herd but a real home, a place that would last beyond his lifetime. Olivia spoke of her love of reading and learning, how she had always felt constrained by the narrow expectations placed on women, how the West felt like a place where those expectations might be more flexible. I want to do something meaningful with my life. she told him one Sunday as they sat beside a creek, watching the water flow over smooth stones. Not just work in a store, though there is honor in that, but something more. I want to build something, contribute something. Does that sound foolish? No, it sounds like you. What if I wanted to teach? There is no school in Fort Laramie, but there should be. The town is growing. Children need education. Then start a school. Just like that, why not? You said it yourself. You want to do something meaningful, do it. Olivia looked at him with wonder. You make it sound so simple, because it is. Hard but simple. You want something, you work for it, you make it happen. Is that how you built your herd? That is how I built everything I have. She leaned against his shoulder, fitting perfectly against his side. I am glad I found you, Nathan Vance, or you found me, however it happened. So am I. Thomas Turner remained a problem, though a diminishing one. As the weeks passed, and he saw that Nathan was not going to disappear, and Olivia was not going to change her mind, his opposition shifted from active hostility to resigned disapproval. He stopped trying to separate them, stopped making pointed comments about other suitors, but he also made it clear through his silence that he did not approve and never would. He will come around eventually, Olivia said hopefully. When he sees that we are serious, that this is not some passing fancy. Maybe, Nathan said, though privately he doubted it. Some men held grudges like others held land, tight and unwilling to let go. By late August, 3 months after Olivia had arrived in Fort Laramie, Nathan knew he wanted to marry her. He had never been more certain of anything in his life. But he also knew he needed to do things right, to prove to Olivia and to her doubting cousin that he could provide for a wife, that he was worthy of the trust she was placing in him. He threw himself into his work with renewed energy, rising before dawn and working until dark, building up his herd, making improvements to his property. The dugout would not do for a married couple. He needed a real house, something Olivia could be proud of, a home, not just a shelter. He started gathering materials, buying lumber when he had spare money, salvaging wood from an abandoned homestead 15 miles south, trading work for supplies. He drew up plans based on houses he had seen, nothing fancy but solid, a 2-room cabin with a real floor and a stone fireplace and windows that would let in light. It would take time to build, working alone in whatever spare hours he could find, but he would do it. For her, he would do anything. Olivia knew something was different. You have been distracted, she said one Sunday when they met for their usual picnic. Is something wrong? No, the opposite. Then what is it? Nathan had not planned to say anything until the house was finished, until he had something concrete to show her. But looking at her now, at the concern in her eyes and the way the late summer sun turned her hair to copper fire, he could not wait any longer. Come with me, he said. There is something I want to show you. He took her to his land, riding side by side through the rolling grassland, thick with late summer growth. His herd was scattered across the range, cattle grown fat on good grass. He had nearly 100 head now, more than double what he had started with in the spring, a respectable number that would only grow with time. But he rode past the cattle, past the dugout that had been his home, to a spot on a low rise where a creek ran year-round and cottonwoods provided shade. This was where he wanted to build, where the land opened up in all directions and a man could see forever. Here, he said, dismounting and helping Olivia down. This is where I want to build my house. Our house, if you will have it. Olivia looked around, taking in the view, the land, the possibilities. It is beautiful. It is just dirt and grass right now, but it could be more. I have been gathering materials, making plans. It will not be a mansion, but it will be solid and comfortable. A real home. He paused, suddenly nervous in a way he had never been, facing down storms or stampedes or any of the 100 dangers that came with ranch life. "Olivia, I love you. I think I have loved you since that first night, though I was too foolish to see it. I want to marry you if you will have me. I want to build this house with you, build a life with you. I know I am not the man your cousin wanted for you. I cannot offer you ease or luxury. But I can offer you honesty and hard work and a love that will not fade. I can offer you a partnership, an equal say in everything we do. I can offer you this land and this life and whatever future we can build together." Tears were streaming down Olivia's face, but she was smiling, radiant. "Yes, yes, yes, I will marry you. Yes to all of it, the house, the life, the partnership. Yes, Nathan, yes." He kissed her then, properly, not the chaste kisses they had shared before, but something deeper, a promise and a claiming all at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Olivia laughed with pure joy. "I have found my home," she said, looking around at the land and then back at him. "That is what I realized when you were talking. Not the house you will build or even Fort Laramie, but you are my home, Nathan. That is what I have been looking for without knowing it, not a place but a person. I finally found my home." Nathan felt something tight in his chest loosen, something he had not even known was there. "You are my home too," he said, and meant it with everything in him. They told Thomas Turner that evening together, standing in his store after closing. He took the news as Nathan expected, with thin-lipped disapproval barely hidden behind a mask of civility. "You are making a mistake, Olivia," Thomas said, "but I can see I cannot change your mind." "You cannot," Olivia agreed, "and it is not a mistake. I love him, Thomas. Can you not be happy for me? I want what is best for you. This is what is best for me." Thomas looked at Nathan. "Can you even afford to marry? Do you have a house to bring her to? I am building one. It will be finished before winter. And in the meantime, we wait. We will do this properly. At least you have that much sense." Thomas sighed, looking suddenly older and tired. "I will not pretend to approve, but you are of age, Olivia, and it is your choice to make. I hope you will at least wait a respectable amount of time before the wedding. Give yourself a chance to be certain. I am already certain. But yes, we will wait until the house is finished. That will give us time to plan properly." "Small mercies," Thomas muttered. They were married in late October, as the leaves on the cottonwoods turned gold, and the air carried the first hints of winter. The ceremony was simple, held in the church in Fort Laramie with a handful of friends and acquaintances in attendance. Thomas gave Olivia away with stiff formality, but he did it, which Nathan considered a victory of sorts. Olivia wore a dress she had sewn herself from fabric. Nathan bought with money he could ill afford but spent gladly. She looked beautiful beyond words, her face glowing with happiness as she said her vows. Nathan's voice shook when he said his, overwhelmed by the reality of what was happening, that this incredible woman was choosing him, choosing this life. The reception was held at the boarding house, the widow who ran the establishment cooking a fine meal and opening her parlor for dancing. Nathan danced with his bride, clumsy and self-conscious, but Olivia did not care. She laughed and pulled him through the steps, and by the end of the evening he had almost found the rhythm. They spent their wedding night in the new house Nathan had built, still smelling of fresh lumber and paint. It was not completely finished, would not be for months as Nathan added improvements and details, but it was solid and weatherproof, with a good stove and sturdy furniture he had made with his own hands. More importantly, it was theirs. Olivia stood in the center of the main room, turning slowly to take it all in. "It is perfect," she said. "It is rough," Nathan corrected, "but it will do for now. No, listen to me. It is perfect because you built it for us. Every board and nail represents your work, your care, your love. I could not ask for a better home. That night, they consummated their marriage with a tenderness and passion that surprised them both. Nathan had been with women before, brief encounters in his younger days that meant little, but this was different. This was Olivia, his wife, his partner, and every touch felt sacred, every kiss a promise renewed. Later, lying in the darkness with Olivia curled against his side, Nathan felt a peace he had never known before. He had built something that mattered, not just a house or a herd, but a life worth living. And he had done it with this woman who had come to him out of a storm and changed everything. "Are you happy?" Olivia asked quietly, her breath warm against his chest. "More than I knew it was possible to be." "You?" "So happy I could burst with it. I keep thinking about how everything had to happen exactly as it did for us to find each other. My parents dying, awful as that was. Thomas offering me work here instead of somewhere else. That storm hitting when it did where it did. You riding that particular road at that particular moment. Change any one of those things and we never would have met. Maybe we would have found each other some other way." "Do you really believe that?" Nathan thought about it. "I do not know, but I am glad we did not have to find out." "So am I." They fell asleep tangled together, warm and content, while outside the October wind sang across the prairie and the stars wheeled overhead in their endless dance. The first year of marriage was hard work but deeply satisfying. Olivia threw herself into making the house a home, sewing curtains and braiding rugs, planting a garden in the spring that would provide vegetables through the summer and into the fall. She learned to cook for a working rancher, hearty meals that could fuel long days of physical labor, and she learned ranch work too, riding out with Nathan to check the herd, helping him doctor sick cattle, even assisting with calving season though the work was messy and exhausting. Nathan marveled at her resilience and willingness to learn. This woman who had been raised in relative comfort back east, who had attended a boarding school and learned deportment and literature and music, was now doctoring cattle and churning butter and hauling water from the creek. She never complained, never acted like the work was beneath her. She simply did what needed doing with steady determination. But Olivia also pursued her own dreams. She started a small school in Fort Laramie, teaching children in the back room of the church 3 days a week. It did not pay much, but it was not about the money. It was about making a difference, contributing to the community, being more than just a rancher's wife. Nathan encouraged her fully, proud of what she was accomplishing, pleased that she had found a way to use her education and her passion for learning. Thomas Turner remained distant, cordial but cold. He never visited the ranch, though he allowed Olivia to visit him in town when she came in for supplies or for her teaching. The estrangement saddened Olivia, but she did not let it poison her happiness. She wrote letters to other relatives back east, re-establishing connections that had frayed after her parents' death, building a network of family that extended beyond one disapproving cousin. By the summer of 1879, Olivia was pregnant. The news filled Nathan with equal parts joy and terror. He wanted children desperately, had dreamed of raising a family with Olivia, but he was also terrified of all the things that could go wrong. Childbirth was dangerous on the frontier, far from doctors and hospitals, and he knew too many men who had lost wives to complications. But Olivia was calm about it, confident in her own body and the midwife in Fort Laramie who had delivered dozens of healthy babies. "Women have been having children for thousands of years," she reminded Nathan when he fretted. "I am strong and healthy. We will be fine." Still, Nathan worried, working himself even harder to ensure they would be provided for, that Olivia could rest when she needed to, that everything was in place before the baby came. Their son was born in March of 1880, during a late winter storm that dropped 6 inches of snow and made the roads impassable. The midwife could not reach them, so Nathan delivered his own son with Olivia coaching him through it, her strength and courage astonishing even in the midst of hard labor. When he finally held the baby, cleaned and wrapped in soft cloth, he wept openly, overcome by the perfection of this tiny person they had created. They named him Samuel, after Olivia's father, and he was everything Nathan had hoped for. A healthy boy with his mother's gray eyes and his father's dark hair, strong lungs that he demonstrated frequently, and a grip like a tiny vice on Nathan's finger. Olivia recovered well from the birth, and within weeks she was back to her normal routines, though now with a baby in a sling on her chest or napping in a cradle that Nathan had made from smooth pine. Samuel became the center of their world, but somehow that only made their love for each other stronger, as if creating this new life together had deepened the bond between them. Thomas Turner met his cousin's son when Olivia brought him to town in May. Something in the older man softened when he saw the baby, the hard edges of his disapproval blunted by the reality of this child. He held Samuel awkwardly but carefully, and Nathan saw tears in his eyes that Thomas blinked away quickly. "He is a fine boy," Thomas said gruffly. "Strong like his father, and stubborn like his mother," Olivia added with a smile. "You look happy," Thomas said, and there was wonder in his voice as if he had not expected this outcome. "I am happy, happier than I have ever been." Thomas looked at Nathan over the baby's head, some silent assessment happening. Finally, he nodded. "You have done well by her, Vance. Better than I thought you would. I was wrong about you." It was as close to an apology as Nathan expected to get, and he accepted it for what it was. "Thank you." After that, Thomas was warmer, not effusive but genuinely friendly, inviting them to Sunday dinners and sending small gifts for the baby. The breach was not completely healed, but it was mending, and that was enough. The years rolled on, each one building on the last. Nathan's herd grew steadily. He bought more land as it became available, expanding his range, building corrals and outbuildings, hiring seasonal help during roundup and calving season. The ranch went from a marginal operation to a solid, profitable business, never making them rich, but providing a comfortable living and the security Nathan had always wanted. Olivia's school grew too. What started as a few children meeting in a church back room evolved into a proper schoolhouse built by community effort, with Olivia as the permanent teacher. She taught reading and writing and arithmetic, but also history and science and literature, determined to give frontier children the same quality education she had received back east. Parents loved her, children adored her, and the town recognized her contribution by paying her a small but steady salary. 2 more children came, a daughter they named Margaret in 1882 and another son, Thomas, in 1885. Their family filled the house with noise and laughter and chaos. Nathan built an addition to accommodate the growing brood, adding bedrooms and expanding the kitchen. Each addition was an act of love, every board and nail placed with care. Life was not perfect. There were droughts that stressed the herd and lean years when money was tight. There were illnesses that terrified them until the children recovered. There were disagreements and frustrations, the normal friction of any marriage. But through it all, the foundation remained solid. Nathan and Olivia were partners in the truest sense, facing every challenge together, celebrating every victory together. On their 10th anniversary, Nathan took Olivia back to the spot where he had proposed, the rise overlooking the creek where their house now stood. The children were staying overnight with Thomas, who had become a doting uncle in his later years, and Nathan and Olivia had the rare luxury of time alone. They sat on the porch of their home as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. Olivia leaned against Nathan, his arm around her shoulders, both of them quiet in the peaceful evening. "You ever regret it?" Nathan asked. "Choosing this life, choosing me?" Olivia turned to look at him, her face showing every one of her 33 years and beautiful for it. "Not for a single moment, do you?" "Never. But I wonder sometimes if you think about what you gave up, the easier life you could have had. The easier life would have been empty. This is real. This is ours. We built it together from nothing but hope and hard work." She gestured at the house, the land, the life they had created. "I meant what I said that day, Nathan. You are my home. You always will be. This place, this land, it is wonderful, but you are the heart of it all for me. I feel the same way about you. You took a half-built life and made it whole." They sat in silence as the stars began to appear, holding each other in the gathering darkness. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called and cattle lowed in response. The wind rustled through the cottonwoods by the creek, a sound as familiar as breathing. "You remember that storm?" Olivia asked after a while. "The one where we met, every detail. The rain, the lightning, how scared I was that I would not reach you in time. I was so frightened in that coach. I thought I was going to die there. And then you appeared like an answer to a prayer I had not even thought to make. I am glad I was there, glad I found you. I am glad you found me too. I am glad for all of it, even the hard parts, because they led us here." Nathan kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her hair, lavender soap and sunshine, and Olivia. "Here is a good place to be." "The best place," she agreed. The years continued to pass, marked by the milestones of family life. Samuel grew tall and strong, more interested in books than cattle, much to his mother's delight and his father's amused acceptance. He would go on to attend university in the East, the first in either family to do so, funded by years of careful saving and sacrifice. Margaret was all determination and fierce independence, running the ranch alongside Nathan when she was still barely tall enough to see over the saddle horn. She would eventually marry a neighboring rancher and build her own legacy on the land. Thomas, the youngest, was quiet and thoughtful, finding his calling in drawing and painting, capturing the beauty of the Wyoming landscape in works that would hang in homes and galleries across the territory. Nathan and Olivia watched their children grow and thrive with pride that sometimes overwhelmed them. They had done this. They had built this family, this life, from nothing but love and stubbornness and faith in each other. Thomas Turner passed away in 1892, leaving his store to Olivia with a letter apologizing for his initial opposition to her marriage and acknowledging that he had been wrong. "Nathan Vance made you happier than I ever saw you," he wrote. "He gave you the life you were meant to have. I am sorry I could not see that from the start. You were right, and I was wrong. Thank you for forgiving a stubborn old fool." Olivia wept when she read the letter, grieving the cousin who had offered her a home when she needed one, and who had eventually become a true friend and uncle to her children. They buried him in the Fort Laramie Cemetery under a cottonwood tree, and Olivia made sure his grave was always tended, flowers planted fresh each spring. She sold the store to a young couple just starting out, using some of the money to expand the school and donating the rest to establish a fund for children who could not afford books and supplies. It was what Thomas would have wanted, she said, even if he had never said so in life. Nathan and Olivia grew old together, their hair turning silver, their hands gnarled from years of work, their faces lined with decades of laughter and tears and life fully lived. They slowed down as age demanded, hiring more help to run the ranch, eventually turning over daily operations to Margaret and her husband. While they settled into a comfortable retirement in the house Nathan had built so many years before. They still sat on the porch most evenings, watching the sunset, talking about everything and nothing, comfortable in the silence that comes from knowing another person so completely that words are sometimes unnecessary. Their grandchildren visited often, filling the house with the noise and chaos that children always brought, and Nathan and Olivia loved every chaotic moment. "We did good, did we not?" Nathan said one evening, his hand finding Olivia's automatically, their fingers lacing together with the ease of 50 years of practice. "We did better than good," Olivia replied. "We built something beautiful, not just this ranch or our family but us, what we have together. That is the real achievement. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, Olivia Vance. That storm brought me more than I deserved. That storm brought us both exactly what we needed, each other." They sat together as the stars came out, the same stars that had shone on them the night they met, the night they married, every night of their long lives together. The wind sang across the prairie, carrying the scent of sage and grass and home. Somewhere nearby, cattle grazed peacefully, and the creek ran as it always had, constant and eternal. Nathan looked at his wife, seeing past the years to the young woman he had pulled from an overturned coach during a storm, seeing every version of her at once, all the Olivias she had been layered into the woman she was now. She was still beautiful to him, still the center of his world, still his home. "I love you," he said, because some things never got old no matter how many times they were spoken. "I love you too," Olivia replied, squeezing his hand. "Always have, always will." They sat together as darkness fell completely. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built a life that mattered. They had come from different worlds, met by chance in a storm, and created something neither could have achieved alone. They had loved deeply and fought hard and worked tirelessly to build not just a ranch but a legacy. And as the night deepened around them and the stars wheeled overhead in their eternal patterns, Nathan Vance and Olivia Turner Vance were content, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together, as they had faced everything for more than half a century. The storm had passed long ago, but its gift remained, a love that had weathered every season and emerged stronger for it. In their final years, they never strayed far from each other. If Nathan went to check the cattle, Olivia walked with him as far as her strength allowed. When Olivia tended her garden, Nathan sat nearby, reading or simply watching her work with the contentment of a man who had found his purpose. They had become so intertwined that the thought of one existing without the other seemed impossible. Nathan passed away first in his sleep, his hand in Olivia's as it had been most nights for 54 years. He was 84 years old, his body finally giving out after a long life of hard work and hard living, but his mind had remained sharp until the end, his love for Olivia undimmed. His last words, spoken just hours before he slipped away, were, "You are still the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." Olivia grieved deeply but not bitterly. They had been blessed with time, so much more time than many couples received. She had her children and grandchildren, and even great-grandchildren around her, all of them, part of the legacy she and Nathan had built together. She lived another 3 years, long enough to see the ranch pass into the third generation of family ownership, long enough to know that what they had created would continue long after they were gone. When Olivia passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 80, she was buried next to Nathan on the rise overlooking the creek, where their house still stood solid and true. Their children and grandchildren gathered to say goodbye, sharing stories of the love that had begun in a storm and lasted a lifetime. Everyone who had known Nathan and Olivia spoke of them as an example of what marriage could be at its best. A partnership of equals, a friendship deeper than romance, though romance was there too, a commitment that weathered every challenge. Margaret stood at her mother's graveside and remembered something Olivia had said to her once when Margaret was young and asking about love. "Home is not always a place," Olivia had told her daughter. "Sometimes it is a person. When you find that person, hold tight and never let go. Your father was my home and I was his. Everything else, the ranch, this land, even you children as precious as you are to me, all of it came from that foundation." The ranch continued to thrive under Margaret's management and eventually under her children's care. The house Nathan built was preserved and expanded, each generation adding to it but maintaining the original structure, a living testament to the man who had built it for love. The school Olivia started eventually became Fort Laramie's primary school, named in her honor, educating generations of children in the same spirit of excellence she had brought to her teaching. Years became decades, became a century, and still the story of Nathan Vance and Olivia Turner was told in Fort Laramie, passed down through families, a favorite tale of local history. The cowboy who rescued a stranded traveler in a storm and found his soulmate. The woman who declared she had finally found her home, not in a place but in a person. Two people who built something lasting from love and work and unwavering commitment to each other. Their great-great-grandchildren still worked the land Nathan had claimed and Olivia had helped him improve. The ranch carried the Vance name, but everyone knew it was built by two people equally, a partnership that had defined everything that came after. On the rise where Nathan proposed and where he later built their house, where they were eventually buried side by side, there stood a marker telling their story for visitors and family members who came to remember. The words carved into the stone were simple, taken from what Olivia had said that day Nathan asked her to marry him, the words that had defined their entire life together. "I've finally found my home." And below, Nathan's response, added later by their children when both were gone. "You were my home too." The prairie wind sang around the marker as it had for more than a century, carrying the scent of sage and wildflowers, the same wind that had driven the storm that brought them together. Cottonwoods grew thick along the creek, their leaves whispering in the breeze. Cattle grazed on the hills, descendants of the herd Nathan had built one animal at a time. The land endured as it always had, beautiful and harsh and unchanging in the ways that mattered. But it was the story that endured most of all. The story of love found in unlikely circumstances, of two people who chose each other against all odds and built a life worth living. It was a story that reminded people what was possible when you were brave enough to trust your heart, when you worked together instead of alone, when you defined home not by walls and roof, but by the person standing beside you facing whatever came next. Nathan and Olivia Vance had lived their story fully, from that storm-tossed night when they met to the peaceful endings of long lives well lived. They had loved deeply, worked tirelessly, raised children who carried their values forward, and left a legacy that extended far beyond the land they had claimed or the cattle they had raised. They had shown generations what true partnership looked like, what enduring love could build, what home really meant. And in the end, that was the greatest gift they left behind. Not property or wealth, or even the blood descendants who carried their names and their stories forward, though all of those mattered. The greatest gift was the example they set, the proof that love like theirs was possible, that finding your home in another person was not just a romantic notion but a real and achievable thing. On clear nights, family members who visited the gravesite said you could almost feel their presence there, together as always, watching over the land they had loved and the family they had created. Whether that was true or just wishful thinking hardly mattered. What mattered was that Nathan Vance and Olivia Turner had found each other, had built a life together, had loved each other until death and beyond. They had found their home, and in doing so, they had created home for generations to come. That was their story, simple and profound. A Western tale of love and land and legacy that would be told as long as anyone remembered the name Vance, and the ranch on the rise overlooking the creek where the cottonwoods grew. The storm that brought them together had lasted only one night, but what grew from it had lasted lifetimes. And that made all the difference.